Abandoned-By-Disney-Part-2. Before I begin, let me just say I haven't been back to any abandoned location since this event. My name is Thomas. I know, classic scary story name. Sigh, I really don't know if that was necessary, I guess because of me still being shaken and wound up from my experiences. Many people have noticed my strange behavior, and I am being committed to a mental institution next week after my experiences. Anyway, let's get to my story. I have had a thing for creepy stuff on and off since middle school. It wasn't until just a few months ago I began to get into creepy stories and accounts of events that I found intriguing. One of the first of these that I found out about was the story Abandoned by Disney. The accounts, descriptions, and especially the photo-negative Mickey Mouse freaked me out and made me curious about the place. If you haven't heard of this place, it's called Mowgli's Palace. It was a resort abandoned by Disney in Emerald Isle, North Carolina. If you want to learn more about the project itself, go listen to or read the story. Anyway, when I heard that story, I wanted to know more for myself. I started by contacting my friend Josh, who used to live in Emerald Isle. Naturally, since he moved there long after the resort closed, knew nothing of the place, but said he would be visiting family back in Emerald Isle, and if I could plan to be there accordingly, he would go to the resort with me. He told his parents about it, and they also wanted to come with us. Also, my dad heard about the place, and, since I needed an adult to go to Emerald Isle with me, he immediately accepted my offer. So we booked our tickets, and planned our schedule on a conference call with me and Josh's mom to plan our weekend. We got there safely, and before I knew it the day of the urbex arrived. The group was me, my dad, Josh, and his dad. Josh's mom backed out last second, which was probably what we all should have done. It took us 5 hours to finally find the place, after traveling to several said locations. On the sixth one, I knew we had found it. The entrance was exactly as the original story had described it, with the giant sequoias holding up the massive gates, and the Abandoned by Disney sign on the gate. Finally, 4 months of preparation and hype had led up to this moment. We all took deep breaths as we entered the grounds through the narrow opening in the gate. The road was just a straight 2-lane path with faded lines and cracked asphalt everywhere. We walked for a good 10 minutes before we came to the circular drive in front of the giant main building, the said palace in the name of the resort. The statue of Baloo with the bird shit all over it like described in the story was there, but was unrecognizable with the crap covering him completely, so he was just a white, unmoving mass. Above the door, we saw Abandoned by Disney again just as described. Then Josh said, "Guys, I think we've seen more than enough." My dad responded with, "Dude, I drove us for hours to find this place, so there's no point in turning back now." We all agreed and entered the main building. Everything was once again just as described, things knocked over, things that were too big to be moved still there, all of it. We had decided to check out the things not mentioned by in the story, so we started at the pool, which was supposedly the only thing ever completed or documented by photos. But when we walked into the area, we realized those pictures were nothing short of dead-ass wrong. The water in the pool was a sickly brown and green. In the water, the plastering was cracked and damaged. However, what surprised me was that there were water moccasins swimming in it. When one came out of the water and hissed at us, something didn't seem right about it. It looked like it more resembled a king cobra than a water moccasin. Then it hit us. Disney had released its stock of animals onto the grounds like described in the story. When we realized it, we looked at each other with those holy shit it's true faces. There must have been some crossbreeding between species, and there had to be other animals crossbred as well that were just as dangerous as this animal was. We got the hell out of the area quick. Thankfully, the snake decided not to follow us. We then decided to investigate places the blogger visited to check them out for ourselves, and see how they had changed. We started at the reptile house, which, no surprise, had not changed at all. No snakes though, thank God. We checked out the rooms, with no changes, but, as was a surprise to nobody, some hurricane damage, especially after the big one that hit a few years back. We then decided to go to the cast members only area, which we had all been dying to see. So we turned around, but when we did, we bumped into somebody. It was an old staff member in the familiar red Mowgli loincloth. He looked, well, human, but something was off-putting about his eyes. You could only see the whites of them. He looked and acted possessed, saying and repeating the same incomprehensible phrase over and over, his mouth the only part of his body moving. As he was saying this, more people in loincloths and women with chota covering their breasts came out, possessed and saying the same monotonous phrase over and over again. Then, at that moment, we all got a video call at the same time, us Apple users a FaceTime, my dad, an Android user, an LG video call. It was all from the same number, 121-519-6605. This made no sense, because you can only call one call at a time, and while you can do group FaceTime, you can't do a video call directly from FaceTime to the LG phone app. What was even weirder is they all picked up at the same time, and there was also no feedback noise or anything. On the screen was the photo-negative Mickey Mouse that intrigued me so much. He first said our names, weirdly from left to right, exactly right. I don't know if he knew or if it was a coincidence. He then said your blogger friend never got to see my head taken off, so now you will, ha, ha. He then began to take off his head, and it was gross as fuck. Mickey also began saying in unison with the loinclothed cast members the same incomprehensible line. We tried hanging up, it wouldn't let us, so we just tucked our phones in our pockets and ran like hell to the cars. Surprisingly, the cast members didn't chase after us. They just turned and stared, still saying the phrase, as we ran from the building. We booked it to the exit, and got back in the car, and drove off. I checked my phone, and thankfully, the call had ended. When we got back to Josh's relative's house, we told them everything. They were in as much shock as we were. When I got home, I looked up the phone number that had called me, and tried calling it back, but it said the number was out of service. Just then, I got a text that said abandoned by God. I blocked the number, and looked up the number again. I ended up finding strange significances. The first 8 digits of the number was a date, December 15, 1966, the day Walt Disney died. The last 2 numbers was the day of the month of December Walt was born, December 5, 1901. I still question what happened that day, but whatever your theory is, never ever go there. This is yet another place that lifts the innocent veil on the company that creates the happiest places on earth.